In episode 4, Joe proposes to Maddie that she become her sister, but of course she's a little confused on how that's going to happen. In the meantime, Joe has to go back to his regular life with Henry and Kate. But Kate is pissed off at him. She doesn't appreciate the way that Joe views her, aka like a queen that needs to be saved. She wants to do things her way, she always has, and she definitely does not want to do it Joe's way. And that scares her. So now he's on the outs with his wife. And because he's on the outs with his wife, when he gets alone, he thinks about Bronte. After this adult alone time, he heads to the bookstore. He immediately heads down to the basement, and he reminds Maddie about his genius idea, which is she is going to become her sister. He tells her that all she needs to do is be Reagan for long enough to not undo all that Kate has done. So restore that charitable donation, vote for Teddy to be on the board, and then she, as Reagan, would step down from the board. Maddie, however, doesn't think she's capable of doing it, and that's when Joe realizes that Maddie has been beaten down her entire life to think that she is the inferior twin. So now he has to build her up, remind her who the hell she is. They start doing a little role play, not the sexy kind, where she pretends to be Reagan, and it is rocky, because she is insecure. But Joe knows that with enough time, she could easily become her sister for an hour or two. Eventually, though, Maddie does ask the question, where exactly is Reagan while I'm doing this? And Joe says that they're going to hold the vote while she is, quote, out of town at a spa in Santa Fe. In reality, he's planning on taking care of Reagan himself. Maddie's big concern, though, is what happens when Reagan comes back and finds out that all of this happened, but Joe tells her, who would believe it? I mean, and at that point, you've got everything you've wanted. You've got her husband, you've got the life. As Maddie continues to practice, though, they hear a commotion up top, and Joe goes to check on it, and it's Bronte. The reason why Bronte is moving so many items around is because she's decided that they will open up the bookstore the next night, and that's something that Joe was not planning on having, especially considering that Maddie is still in the basement. But Bronte insists. She's going to have a little bit of a get-together with that writers group that she's a part of. They're all going to come over. They're going to see the bookstore. And because of the fact that Joe is smitten so hard with Bronte, he just goes along with it. Yeah, okay. I guess we're opening tomorrow night. And they start preparing. After Joe does agree to it, she feels like she needs to address the elephant in the room, which is what she said the previous night about how she couldn't be in an affair, which was clearly an indication that she wanted to be in an affair with Joe. And she sets the boundary, hey, that's not me, I don't know what came over me, but you're you, I'm me, you're married, I'm not a homewrecker, and it doesn't matter how we feel about each other, we just can't. And Joe agrees with it, even though he clearly doesn't want to. She then switches the subject and asks him what his writing is about these days, because she's interested in what the protagonist in the story is up to. And lately, the protagonist in the story has been taking Bronte to Pound Town, but Joe can't admit that. So he just tells Bronte, yeah, I haven't really been writing recently. Another hilarious lie. They then get into Bronte's writing because she wants Joe to take a look at some of the stuff she's written, and he really likes it. They talk about the protagonist in her story, and there's a male role in there somewhere, and it seems eerily familiar. And she admits that, yeah, it is based on a person, but she doesn't tell him flat out it's based on you, even though it seems like it is. This, however, gets into good, evil, and the role that they play in stories. And she's got this diagram, but essentially what she tells Joe is that she's attracted to chaotic good, like people that are willing to kill for the betterment of the community. She doesn't know it, but she's telling Joe that she is very attracted to him. And suddenly Joe, who is dealing with Kate at home, treating him like a pariah, well, now he feels seen. After this exciting revelation for Joe, he does go down and deliver some food for Maddie, and they continue to work on Maddie's impression of her sister, and she's still rough. But after some role-playing by Joe, where he starts to really just beat into Maddie the way that Reagan would, it finally clicks with her. She finally flips a switch, and suddenly Maddie isn't standing in front of Joe. Reagan is standing in front of Joe. Now, while this is going on, Kate has taken matters into her own hands. She goes to the office where Reagan is, and she's going to use that extortion to try to get Reagan to step down from the board. She's convinced that this will work. The problem is Reagan continues to go with the narrative that Kate had Uncle Bob killed, and she's got a little bit of proof. When Kate tries to bully Reagan on stepping down, Reagan bullies her right back and does it even better. She tells her that they're going to have an autopsy for Uncle Bob, and it should prove whether or not he actually committed suicide. And if he didn't, obviously she has a pretty good idea of who had him killed. But more importantly, the reason why she would have had him killed. Because what Reagan found out was that Kate had covered up the death of Reese Montrose and blamed some poor college kid for it. Now, while all the accusations are flying, Kate is denying. But what you have is two women demanding that the other step down from their role or else. It's like a game of chicken in the show Succession. But as they go their separate ways, it's pretty clear that Reagan kind of has the upper hand. Kate seems a little shook. Kate rushes home from this, and she waits for Joe to get home, and she tells him everything that went down in their meeting, and she's decided that she is going to resign. Joe, however, doesn't think that this is over. I mean, he knows the solution of the problem, but Kate reminds him, I'm not doing your solution, and I've told you that many, many times. Now, she does admit that while looking at Reagan, she did decide that she wanted her dead. And when she says that, Joe gets this evil smirk over his face, and he tells her, I love that about you. But she pulls back, and she says, just because I admit that it's in me doesn't mean I like it about myself. I'm disgusted by it. And I despise the fact that you won't even try to control it in you. It's pretty clear that Kate does not want Joe to do anything but stand down and look inward. Joe can't do that, obviously. He's got a plan, and he has to execute it. And part of that plan is killing Reagan. It would allow Maddie to take over Reagan's seat for a couple hours and then vanish. So the next day, Joe heads to Reagan's home where he knows that she's alone, and he figures this will be an easy kill, but it's not. I mean, Reagan has taken some martial arts classes. And these two go back and forth. I mean, Joe really has to track her down, but eventually he's able to knock her out with a bowling pin and get her body back to the bookstore and throw her in the cage with Maddie. With an unconscious Reagan laying there, Maddie is concerned for her sister. But then Joe puts an insulin needle in the door, and he tells Maddie, that's for you to use on your sister to kill her. The guilty don't run to the authorities, and if you refuse to do it, I'll have to kill you both. So now Maddie has a decision to make. In the meantime, Joe has to get prepared for the grand opening of the bookstore that night, but what he was unaware of is while he was gone, Bronte had snooped around, and she found the writing that Joe had actually done. Even though he said he wasn't up to writing recently, obviously that's a lie, and she found all of the pieces of paper that he wrote that's clearly about her. So when the doors do open that night, there's a little bit of sexual tension going on between the two now that Bronte knows how Joe really feels about her. The grand opening, though, is going really well. I mean, people seem to be having a good time. People are buying books. That is until Clayton, Bronte's ex, walks to the door. She didn't invite him, but he showed up anyway. And at first, Joe lets it slide until he sees that they're having a tense conversation in the corner where Clayton has his hands on Bronte, and it's obvious that she is uncomfortable. So Joe tells him to back off, and Clayton tells him to pound sand. But when Clayton looks at Joe and says, you can have her back when I'm done, Joe snaps. He jacks up Clayton against one of the bookshelves, and he tells him, you need to get out of here right now, I'm not telling you again. And you can see it in Joe's eyes, he's not messing around. So Clayton does what he's told. A very emotional Bronte has to excuse herself. She runs out of the bookstore, and Joe runs after her, and he catches up with her in an alley. And she's crying, and she's upset. And he starts apologizing to her, telling her, hey, I'm sorry, it's not my place to protect you. And she agrees with him, saying, you're right. I'm not yours to protect. You don't get to do romantic things like that when you have a wife and a child. She then reveals that she found the pages in his drawer, and she tells him, you don't get to write the most beautiful things that someone could ever want to read about themselves. Joe finally admits to Bronte how he really feels, and even though he doesn't want to feel like that, he can't help what the heart wants. But Bronte again reminds him we can't do this, and she goes back to the bookstore. Joe also heads back, but he leaves Bronte alone. This time he goes to check on the basement, where his little plan had worked. There's Maddie, and there's a dead Reagan. And it wasn't like Maddie initially wanted to do it, but when Reagan woke up, she just continued to poke the bear and poke the bear and poke the bear, and finally Maddie just snapped. She's ready to do Joe's bidding the next day. And the next day, when that board of directors meeting votes, Maddie does show up, pretending to be Reagan. And at first, Kate starts out by saying, this is very difficult to say, but... And she's about to resign. Until Maddie, pretending to be Reagan, steps in and says, oh, come on. Don't act like you're upset about this. And Maddie does exactly what Joe wanted. She steps down, she agrees to Teddy joining the board, and she tells the group that Maddie will get both of the votes. It's a huge surprise to Kate. She was not expecting this at all, and she knows that Joe had something to do with it. Joe ends up telling Kate that he pressed Reagan on the issue, and Reagan actually had nothing. She was bluffing the entire time. Kate, though, doesn't believe him. And when she tells him as much, he says, Kate, we won. I mean, why can't you be happy? But Kate can't be happy, and she just walks away. That pushes Joe, who's feeling pretty underappreciated, back to the bookstore where he finds Bronte packing up. She figures she can no longer work there if they're going to have this sexual tension, but that sexual tension leads to sex. I mean, they finally end up doing the damn thing.
Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel and subscribing to my Patreon. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. If you left a comment, I don't get back to you. I usually don't check the comments unless they're like a super comment. Also, if you don't see the next video up on the end screen, not to worry. It'll be up in a day or two.